That's strange. Hello. So I just want to tell you guys that I started a podcast. I've been doing this channel, if you don't know, for like 15 years. And, I've had my ups and downs, as everybody always does. I've always wanted to start a podcast. It is a completely different animal than sitting here and gabbing and seeing myself reflected back. Basically, just having a one-way conversation in the mirror when you're doing it like this. When you're doing a podcast, it's completely different, and you're pausing. I'm just going to pause so I don't have to, edit that cough out later. I do like the fact that it doesn't matter how I look, as long as I don't sound like Carol Channing or whatever, because I've been smoking too much. But there are 3 episodes up already. I'm going to do 2 episodes a week. 1 episode is going to be absolutely free. If you want the bonus content, then you'll be able to sign up for my Patreon and you'll get it that way. It's available on several platforms. I am bringing that good old Sadhaka sass to some very serious subjects like shamanism, banishing, magic in general, the occult, queer spirituality, which you may have seen another live stream that I just did, just trying to find a space for my queer brothers and sisters who are spiritually minded people and have no place to go, no church to walk into, no particular community to move to, especially within the gay community. There's nothing. You're either like a Unitarian, Universalist person. I don't even know. And most people don't want to go back to their Christian roots. Most of them have Christian roots, the people that I'm dealing with and talking to. Most of them don't want to go back to that because they have so much trauma around that. And so finding new communities, new ways to connect with each other, and to explore what is unique about queer people and spirituality. I keep getting that people in the past who were of a different sort of persuasion were the shamans and the healers and the, this and that. And I think that that's partially true, but I don't think that it tells the whole story. I think that we have several functions within society, even within heteronormative society, in a cultural or familial way. You can still fill a very important role by being a gay uncle or a gay aunt or whatever. But I think that when we bring spirituality into the equation, we have to go beyond that line of thinking. What are you actually doing, in a sort of family situation? What are you doing for the mutual cultivation of spirituality within your family? Can you even do that as someone within the queer community? Because half of your family probably doesn't speak to you anyway. This is real stuff that I think that we all need to think about, not just as people who are in the queer community, but I think we need to talk about it as straight people too. Like, what do we do? Is it even up to you? So that's just one of the focuses that I want to have in the podcast. The only reason that I'm going that route, and it's not like the only stuff I'm going to talk about, believe me, I've got no end to the spiritual mumbo jumbo that I can and will talk about in this platform, on this platform, or in my podcast. But the reason that I went there was because last year, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. You might have seen those live streams back then when I was literally on death's door, dying of AIDS, and I lost my right eye. I lost all vision in my right eye. My body was shutting down completely. I was undiagnosed. I didn't know I had HIV. And so after getting through that and realizing that I had an easier time getting through that stuff, I don't even know how to describe it. It's not like it wasn't incredibly difficult and traumatic. Crikey, Sadhaka, what are you talking about? But people were almost appalled at how just level I was the entire time. Like they were just telling me, oh, you've got a cold, you've got a sniffle, and I'm going to give you some medicine and you're going to get over it. It's not like I was apathetic. It's not like I was numb to it or jaded, but that was so crazy in my life and everything that I was going through. And I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of telling you what a hell it was for the past year and a half, just trying to exist day by day, not knowing what was wrong with me and not knowing how to find out even. Um, and yet I was able to just get through it and be sort of relatively unaffected. I was doing like meditations and energy work while I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, just sitting there vibing like a rock star, and the nurses would come in and be like, "Oh, it feels so amazing in here. Like, I want to come out and I want to come in here and hang out with you." Like I had decorated the whole place, yeah. And nobody understood how I could be so calm in the face of such turmoil. Literally, they had a counselor come in to talk to me because they were afraid I was going to try to jump out the window, as someone had tried to do the day before, who got the same diagnosis of HIV. He didn't want to live anymore. They had to restrain him because he was literally trying to jump out the hospital window to end his life. That's the type of stuff that people go through. And I'm looking at these comparisons and I'm going, how, as a spiritual person, I've been somewhat of a spiritual force of healing and maybe, I hope, a little bit of wisdom here and there in the spiritual communities, especially on YouTube, for a very long time now. How am I supposed to ignore the experience that I just went through and say, I'm just going to do whatever? I want to help people in the queer community. I think that we don't have enough spiritual leaders in the queer community. I'm not saying that I'm a leader necessarily, but whatever. If that's what you want to call me, that's what I'll be. So that's that piece of it. The first 3 episodes are shamanism, banishing, and direct spiritual experience. This is the crux of the entire podcast, baby. What my whole thing is, and my mantra, not mantra, my motto has been through my entire spiritual journey is direct spiritual experience. This is what we're missing in all the communities when it comes to spirituality. The only thing that people are familiar with these days in regards to having a spiritual experience is something that happens completely randomly and is transcendent to you, or being in a church and getting a little emotional for whatever reason, or a mosque or a temple or whatever. When you're around a bunch of people and they all believe like you, they all worship like you, they all do the things that you do, it's easy to get swept up in the emotion of that and sort of get into this group thing. And it's a good thing. It's a good energy. It's beautiful. I'm not knocking that. However, most people do not believe that they can even have experiences of the divine. When they meditate these days, it's all about mindfulness or guided meditations. They get into a kind of relaxed and groovy state, and then they click off the thing and they go to Starbucks, Direct spiritual experience is about transcendent experience. Transcendent experience means that you will be in some type of altered state of consciousness. We need to bring all these pieces together so that when we are crafting our own spiritual practices, when we're actually practicing whatever it is that we picked up from whatever tradition or method or mode or modality or whatever, we are actually having altered states of consciousness. That doesn't mean, though, that every single altered state of consciousness is a spiritual altered state of consciousness. The path of psychedelics or plant medicine can be just one big excuse for people to just get blasted out of their heads and disconnect from reality for way too long. I'm very aware of that too. So even though it may be somewhat of a direct spiritual experience, just having an altered state or getting into an altered state of consciousness does not necessarily mean you're having a spiritual experience, right? But I think the real point is merging all of this stuff together, doing it in the right context, doing it with the right intention. That's where intention and will comes into it. Magical things they are. And then we can start to craft a personal path that really does have direct spiritual experience for us. When people have direct spiritual experiences, suddenly they're no longer afraid of death. Suddenly they can go through a traumatic event like losing someone or having a near-death experience, and not be so rocked by it that their entire world falls apart. You know what I'm saying? So I love you guys. I hope that you will come check out my podcast. I have a lot of high hopes for it. Again, you can find it on Podbean. NaeonA is the name, which of course stands for New Aeon Awakening, just like this channel. You can find it on all the platforms. I'm pretty sure it's on Apple and Amazon. I know it's definitely on Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Listen Notes, and Podchaser, and all of these different platforms. And yeah, I think you will enjoy it. If you want to also support my work, which honestly at this point is completely new and different and just jumping off, then please think about signing up for my Patreon. It's just a couple dollars right now. Eventually, I'm going to have bonus content. And besides the podcast and the live streams that I'm doing here, which, by the way, will be every Friday and Saturday going forward, before I go straight into the gay men's spiritual meetup on Zoom right after I do these live streams. So it'll be kind of a full day, Fridays and Saturdays, just like getting the stuff out there. And besides all of that, what was the last point? I was doing really good for a while. Also going to start doing in those live streams here on YouTube, different little presentations using the Zoom platform. And then that will go directly into the meetings later. Also doing an energy healing session probably every Friday before I go into those meetings later. And then also, what was the last thing I wanted to mention? Oh, that's pretty much it. All right. Love your faces.